Hi, Mark.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. Mark Lesnik, you're a partner at Fortissimo, and I'm not sure that anybody outside of the inner circle of the financial sort of newspapers in Israel are familiar with Fortissimo, although you're huge, right?
Well, I'll tell you, we've been around now 21 years, and we raised $2.7 billion from financial institutions globally.
Nice.
Yes, it's a private equity fund, so we invest in more maturing companies as opposed to typical venture capital, which are early stage companies. We have about 40 companies in the portfolio today. Some are household names like Cellcom, the largest cellular provider in Israel, Sugat, which provides dry foods and manufactures and distributes them, company like SodaStream. And then there are a number of technology and other industrial companies that are lesser well known.
Yeah. But very nice. Those names are definitely familiar. You're also, Fortissimo is also very active with ESG. We've been sort of kind of together on a journey for the past almost 2 years by now, I think, right?
Correct.
So why are you active? Why are you taking care of ESG? That's not so common with private equity in Israel.
True. True. Well, first, I want to thank you also, and I want to, I guess we can say in Hebrew, kol hakavod, kudos to Maala for the putting ESG at the forefront in Israel, and you've helped us and our portfolio companies also. I tell you, I think the impetus for us was several years ago, maybe when we were raising Fund 5, I'd say about 5 or 6 years ago, we were getting ESG questionnaires from our investors that are multinational financial institutions, and they were asking us what we're doing for ESG. And as I took a deeper dive, I realized that a lot of them signed on to what's called the UN PRI, which is
Principles
of Responsible Investing, right? And so they wanted to ensure that basically, we were abiding by those principles as well as our portfolio companies. And so when we looked into it, we realized that, this isn't just something that's nice to have. I would say it's actually kind of, if you're using an acronym, I'd say the ABCs of responsible investing. And so we said, hey, this is something that we should make sure that we're implementing and our portfolio companies are implementing as well.
Very nice. And you also sort of started to take care of ESG internally at the fund level, right? I would say, as a segue to say it's doable and we need to set an example, right?
Sure.
Even though that, as a team, you're sort of a team of 25, right? Something like that.
I'll tell you the truth. Initially, we looked at ourselves kind of and said, we're sitting in an office space in the middle of Tel Aviv. We're 25 people. We don't have a manufacturing facility. What can we do to show that we're ESG compliant? But then we realized that even by taking sort of baby steps in each of the areas, we can contribute and, more importantly, set an example for our portfolio companies. So just to highlight, for example, in the environmental segment, we encourage hybrid vehicles. We cut out plastic goods in the office. We increase the recycling, encouraging carpooling. We got green energy. So we made strides in the environmental sector. In the social sector, even though a lot of the employees and partners were volunteering individually, we set aside several days a year where we'd go as a group and we'd pick fruit, we'd packages finiti, kind of to show that it's important to us as a company. And we increased the charity. This past year, we donated about 2 million shekel through Shmura, which is where we had donated equity of our portfolio companies to charitable organizations. And then in the governance area, we adopted a number of policies, diversity, code of ethics, anti-corruption, gifts, so on. And we also made sure that we had checks and balances, I would say, in both the financial aspects of our business and also just in the decision-making processes. So we did, as I said, baby steps, which hopefully will help achieve strides in our portfolio companies.
And it definitely sets an example and kind of sends a message across. And definitely the impact is through your portfolio companies, those 40 companies.
Right.
So what are you doing to make sure that they're sort of going forward with ESG?
Okay. Well, first of all, we created internally a team. It's not just myself working with Sophie, who's the head of our marketing, and with Shlomo Ehrlich, who's the head of our operations. And together, we also help implement ESG policies and initiatives at our portfolio companies. So some of them were doing ESG initiatives, but it just wasn't formalized. So that was kind of easy, saying, look, you're doing it anyway. Let's put formal policies.
It's always, by the way, a very
So it's a kind of easy start. But what we decided to do was, initially we spoke to the CEOs and said, this is important to us. And they said, okay, no problem. But it wasn't really on the top of their priority list.
Yeah.
So then we actually asked.
Let's say that they're very busy.
They're very busy, exactly. They weren't against it, they just never got to it. So then we kind of said, okay, we need to have an ESG representative at each company, and that can be whoever's relevant. Some companies, it might be the operations guy because it's manufacturing. It could be the CFO, it could be the HR, it could be the marketing. And so it really varies where that person comes from, and sometimes they even have teams. And then what we have is we have an ESG forum on a quarterly basis where the ESG rep attends. We have expert speakers. You were a speaker at one of them.
I was
explain what Maala was.
Yeah.
So in these forums, we also have portfolio companies present what they've been doing, and that encourages other companies because they're like, wow, they're doing that. Yeah. We're behind. We got to do something, and then we kind of give them updates on what's going on. But we don't leave it at that. We follow through because we make sure now that there are slides in each quarterly board meeting, so that the CEO sees what's going on, and he takes responsibility because he has to present to the board what they planned on doing, what they're doing now, and what they're going to be doing in the future. Because we also set targets and KPIs so that we can follow up on what they're doing.
Well done. So there's a process in place. There's sort of positive competition. There's resources.
Exactly.
There's also a portal.
Yes. So we created a portal where it has a wealth of information, easily accessible about ESG and various industries, and then we also have like templates of policies, about 8 or 9 policies that can be easily customized based on the company and the industry. So we do what we can to help them. We also ourselves published an ESG report, an annual report, and we encourage our portfolio companies, and last year several have, and this year we hope to have more do that. A number of them have joined.
They already joined the Maala.
They joined the Maala Index, and our goal is by the end of the year to have a super majority of them join as well.
We're definitely ready to welcome all of them in.
Right. Do you have... I think it's important also because it kind of gives you a seal of approval. ESG is coming. I mentioned that the impetus initially was coming from our investors, but the truth is, I'd say it's coming from 4 corners. It's coming from the employees because they want to be happy with where they're working. It's also coming from customers and from suppliers. Some of our portfolio companies have pointed out to us, they send us emails they're getting from customers and suppliers saying, how do you, could you have any rating? Do you have any seal of approval of compliance with ESG? Because the last thing they want is to buy, source something from a company that's manufacturing, I don't know, in China with child labor or in Africa with corruption or whatever it is. So they want to know that the companies they're buying from are ESG compliant. So I think Maala really is important there as well.
Thank you. And there's regulation as well, right? Especially in Europe. Also affecting
yes. There is a lot of regulation. It's funny, when Trump won, a number of my partners as well as some of the portfolio companies reached out to me and they're like, hey Mark, I think you can table ESG right now. And it's like, it's over. And I'm like, no, that's not the case. Okay. I think Trump maybe is not so keen on, I don't know, with climate change.
On a couple of things.
Exactly. I'd say climate change or some other environmental things. But again, he's against corporate waste. Look what he's doing to the, to the government, totally turning it upside down. And I think social and governance, he's a corporate person. He wants corporate governance. So, and there is still a strong movement pushing ESG forward in the States. But I say actually even stronger regulatory perspective coming from Europe. And some of our portfolio companies even reached out and said, listen, could you help us? There are new regulations. And if we want to export our products into the EU, we need to comply with these regulations. Could you help us with that? And so in Q2, we already booked a lawyer from Gornitsky, who's an environmental specialist. And she's actually on top of ESG. And she's going to bring all the regulatory items that are relevant to Israeli companies who are doing business in Europe.
And again, it's a very, very important resource for a company who is sort of looking for a way. Finally, you've been in this journey for quite a while. So any kind of aha moments that you kind of say, wow, ESG is working for me in a way?
Yeah, you know what? I think it goes both ways, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, I think there are some deals that we decided not to invest in because of ESG. Okay, because we take a look at ESG. I focused a lot today more on what we do post-investment, but even pre-investment, when we analyze companies, we take a look at E and the S and the G as well, for reasons I mentioned earlier. And the truth is that it's even prevented us from making investments at times, because when we dug deep in diligence, one occasion we found that they were using some hazardous materials which weren't readily apparent, and so we stayed away from that. And another instance, actually, a company where was doing business in a certain region in the world where there was a lot of corruption and there were questionable payments that were made. And so we said, we don't want to get involved in that. And so it might have saved us, because of being so ESG conscious, it might have saved us from making a terrible mistake in investing in a company that seemed attractive on the surface. And then feeling good about it. I mean, especially investing in a lot of the healthcare companies, you feel like you're saving lives and doing great things there. But one that really sticks out of my mind also is invested in SodaStream. And that's a company that is incredibly environmentally friendly. I think when we first invested, their whole marketing scheme was, you know what, you don't have to schlep bottles, it's convenience and it's cheaper. And it's hard to convince someone that it's cheaper when you can buy, a can of soda for I don't know, $1 and it costs $200 for the machine. So we switched the whole thing to being environmentally friendly and it totally took off. And it was true. It's like we felt great that you have, one bottle can last a year as opposed to the hundreds of plastic, bottles that you need to acquire. So I would say that, we're not an impact fund. There are some funds that their whole investment, thesis is to invest in items that, promote E, S, and the G.
Yeah.
So our goal is to maximize value for our shareholders. But at the same time, I think that it's not mutually exclusive. We can be careful with what we're investing in to make sure we comply with ESG. And I don't think it's a hindrance to investing. I think that it only enhances the value of the company. It's sort of a win-win.
Yeah, so, I would agree with that. I think it's a very strong argument, and going mainstream is what we need here.
I'm proud to be on the forefront. Fortissimo, we're proud to be on the forefront of ESG, really, in the private equity industry in Israel. And I hope others join as well.
Mark, thank you very much for sharing all that sort of process with us.